Hey folks, welcome back to Markelly Farm out here in mid-Nebraska. We had about 20 inches of snow here the last couple days. And you can see that we've done a lot of snow movement out in the yard. It took me about 8 hours yesterday. But today we're going to do an inside project in the kitchen. So stick around and we'll get that done. Brandy's outside running in the snow, but Ruby's in here keeping me company. So what we're going to make today is some personal pies. I actually mentioned them in the video the other day when we were down in the pantry, and that kind of inspired me to make some because I haven't made any in quite some time. And if you don't know what they are, they're a little single serving pie that we bake actually right inside of a mason jar. And then you can put the lid on the jar and you can send those along for people or give them as gifts, whatever you want to do. Really convenient, super easy, and super fun. So let's get after it. These are the jars we'll be using. I got a couple out already. And they come 4 in a pack. They're a half-pint jar. And they're these cute little squatty jars. And we're going to make a pie in these jars. So on the menu is an apple, a peach, and a pear. We're going to make 2 of each of those kind of pies in these jars. And these are our canned fruit right off the farm. You can see the space here in the bottom of the peach container. Anytime you cold pack peaches, you're going to get this little space in the bottom. But all of these fruits have been packed or canned in a syrup. So unlike fresh fruit, we're not going to be adding any more sugar than what's already in these fruits. We don't want to end up with a super sugary dessert. And we're going to start mixing these up. So let me get 3 mixing bowls and we'll make 3 separate pie fillings. All right, in each bowl we got kind of a heaping cup, maybe a cup and a quarter of our fruit. So now we're going to add our thickener to our mix. Usually you would use cornstarch or flour. But in any fruit pie, I like to use this minute tapioca. You can get it at your store. And it's kind of a really good insurance on your pie setting. And I use it in all my fruit pies. And it works really well. It's kind of a no-fail thickener. So for this amount, we're going to add a teaspoon in each bowl of that minute tapioca. I have to apologize for the noise. Kelly's automatic vacuum robots running around in the kitchen. The next thing in the bowl is a pinch of salt. In each bowl we use Redmond sea salt. It's our favorite salt. And then we're going to put some cinnamon in now. Let's get that out of the cupboard. So for our cinnamon, it's going to be 1/8 of a teaspoon. And 1/8 of a teaspoon is half of a quarter. So not everybody's going to have 1/8 of a teaspoon. All right, we got our cinnamon in each of the bowls, 1/8 of a teaspoon. Now normally, you remember your pie crust is going to have flour, sugar, nutmeg, the apple pie, and all that. Lemon juice to keep things looking fresh. But since these are already canned, they've already had the citric acid put in them. We don't need the flour because the minute tapioca, obviously, the nutmeg would be so minuscule that we're not even going to add it. And these already had sugar in them, remember. So we're good to go. We're going to stir these up. We're going to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. And then we'll start making our pie crust. Our pie fillings are ready. So the crust that we're using when you're in a pinch or in a hurry, these crusts that come in a roll, highly recommend these. They're the closest thing to homemade pie crust that you're going to get. Do yourself a favor, do not use those pre-stamped in the pan pie crusts. They're gross and you don't get this beautiful kind of home cooked edge on it. So you can almost slip one of these pies by as homemade, which basically is homemade, you're just not making the crust. But really good flaky crust comes out just like this in the picture. It's really, really close to homemade. So they come 2 in a package. and 2 of them will provide all the crust that we need, because we're going to put a bottom crust in here and a top crust. And when you unroll these crusts, the very inside doesn't cool or warm up as quick as the rest, so you get kind of these crackly things over here, the little cracks in the crust. Use these for your bottom, and then use your pristine ones for the top. So we'll show you how to get this done. I used one of our large rings that I have just laying around in the drawer. Use that for a kind of a cookie cutter type deal. And then we'll come through and start putting the crusts in the jars and putting this stuff together. All right, here we go. We've got our jars, our clean jars. You don't have to be too crazy about sterilizing these things like you do with canning, because they're going to be baking in the oven. So we got one of our crust that's got a little crinkle to it. Put it down in the jar and kind of center it in the middle for your bottom crust, about like that. And then we'll start with the pear pie filling, since that's the one that's got the spoon in it still. Let's get this crust in here, and we can do both of them. We're doing 2 of each. So we've got that all pressed down, and then we want to distribute this stuff in the jar, half in each, or whatever we can get in there. It will cook down just a little bit, so you want to pack it in there pretty good. Make sure it gets all the way out to the sides. It should take almost all of it, because remember, a half pint is a cup, and we had just over a cup of fruit. So that'll be just a hair over half a cup in each jar, which should be perfect. Put that in there. Tuck it back in the sides. We got one more piece in here, which I think is going to fit nicely into this one. So we'll pack it down pretty good. So now we're going to take our top crust, and we're going to put our top crust in. And when you put your top crust in, you kind of want to tuck it in underneath the corner, if you can get it back in there. Push it down to where it kind of goes underneath that edge on the jar, this little edge. Poke it back in there. It comes out just like that. So then you take you a knife, put a little cut in the top, like that, just like you would with any other pie. And there you have it. So we'll get all these filled, and we'll put them on a baking sheet, and we'll get them in the oven. Each one of the circles makes 7 of your rings here. So if you wanted to do 7 pies, you could use this stuff for the bottom crust. Just kind of smush it all down into the bottom of your jar, because you're not going to see it. And you could get, you know, 1 more of your pies. There's all of our little personal pies made up. We got pear, apple, and peach. And then we're going to throw them in the oven. Now these do not need to cook like 50 minutes like a normal pie, because these are much smaller. And basically all we're looking for is for the filling to be bubbling and the top crust to be a beautiful golden brown, and then they're ready to come out. I've never cooked them in this oven, so I will let you know what the time was when I pull these out. But let's get them in. Now you notice we're putting cold jars into a heated environment. Mason jars are heat-resistant jars, and putting them into hot air as opposed to hot water is a lot less shock, because the continuity of the air is not that of the water, and it doesn't heat up as fast, so we are fine with that. All right, the filling was boiling real nicely. We pulled it out of the oven, and we took just a little bit of sprinkle of sugar on the top of each crust. I did it afterwards because I don't want that to melt and disappear. So we're going to let these sit and cool. The crusts are nice golden brown. You can see how they flaked up really nicely. That's what we were looking for. So 35 minutes total on these in a 400-degree oven. Now, if you wanted to do this with your own pie recipe, it'll work. You'll just have to adjust your cooking times. And I think about a whole pie recipe would probably fit in about 6 of these jars, maybe 6 or 8. So give it a shot. Try it with your favorite pie. You could do it with pumpkin, whatever. You got to run out to the shop for a minute. You can see the size of these snow piles we had to make. Biggest one being over here, right there by the barn. That's a big one. So I want to go inside the shop and see what kind of damage we got in there. So whenever the wind's blowing and we get snow, it snows inside the shop. Comes up underneath the door because there's a little air gap there. A couple other spots over here. This actually falls from up above because the tin up there has got some gaps in it. We need to get this thing sealed up. Wow, look over here. Created like a snow wave down here. Blows in underneath the cracks in the door. Last year I had 2x6 in here to try to keep some of this from happening, but it doesn't really hurt anything over here. You hear something? Our pies are all cooled off, and now we can put the lids on them to preserve the freshness of them, just like wrapping in plastic wrap or something. Now, these aren't made for long-term storage. They're made to be eaten pretty much right away, but you can use one of these little decorative little covers that you put underneath your ring, or just put a label on it. Or don't label at all. You don't have to. But I like to know what's actually inside of it, so that's what they look like, folks. All right, folks, that's all there is to it. It's a quick and easy project. You can give these away as gifts. Just tell them to bring your jars back. Or Kelly could take one of these to lunch and have a little treat at lunch or something like that. Or they could just lay around the house and we'll eat them over time when we get the sweet tooth throbbing in the evening. So hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gets your creative juices flowing and you get in the kitchen and do something like this. It's real satisfying, and people love this kind of stuff. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. Come back and see us here on Markelly Farm. We'll catch you later.